Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into Discourses by Epictetus. Now, I know ancient philosophy might not sound like, the most thrilling way to spend your time, but trust me, this stuff is seriously relevant, even thousands of years later.
What's fascinating about Discourses is that, it wasn't meant to be some stuffy textbook. It's a collection of Epictetus's actual lectures jotted down by his student, Arian. So it's we're kind of eavesdropping on a Stoicism 101 class in ancient Rome.
I love that. It's raw, it's real, and it gives us a glimpse into how these ideas were actually taught and, debated back in the day. So set the scene for us. Who was Epictetus and what was he all about?
Well, Epictetus was born a slave, gained his freedom, and became this renowned philosopher in Rome.
Wow.
You can imagine, amidst the gladiators and emperors, this guy is teaching people how to live a good life, not by amassing wealth or power, but by mastering their own minds.
Okay, I'm already hooked.
Yeah.
So how do you master your mind like a Roman Stoic?
Right.
What's the secret sauce?
Well, it all kind of boils down to understanding what's truly within our control, like our thoughts, our reactions, our choices.
Right.
And what's not, which is pretty much everything else.
Yeah.
The Stoics believed that external events, whether good or bad, are just part of the natural order. It's how we respond to them that truly matters.
That makes so much sense. It's so easy to, get caught up in the chaos of life and just stressing about things that we can't change. But what if we could just shift that focus to what we can influence?
Right.
Like our own attitude, our own actions. That feels incredibly empowering.
It is. And Epictetus gives us this brilliant framework for doing just that. He talks about impressions and assent.
Yeah.
Now, bear with me. These terms sound a bit technical,
Okay.
but they're actually really simple and powerful ideas.
Okay, I'm all ears. Break it down for us.
Okay. Imagine you're late for work because your train is delayed. Your immediate thought might be, this is a disaster. I'm going to get in so much trouble. That's an impression. It's like an automatic thought or judgment that pops into your head.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Like that mental spiral starts and suddenly your whole day feels ruined.
Right. But here's the key. Epictetus says we have the power to pause to examine that impression before we even react to it. So instead of just accepting that initial disaster thought, we can ask ourselves, is this really true? Is it within my control?
So instead of freaking out and letting that impression, control our whole morning, we can choose to, see things differently. Maybe it's an opportunity to catch up on some emails or practice, some deep breathing on the crowded train.
Exactly. And that's where assent comes in. We have the power to withhold our assent, meaning, we don't buy into that initial impression. We don't let it dictate our emotions or our actions.
This is kind of reminding me of something I've seen on the Affirmify Journey YouTube channel. They talk about taking ownership of your thoughts and focusing on what you can control. It's such a powerful, shift in mindset. Maybe we should link to their channel in the show notes for our listeners who want to kind of explore that more.
That's a great idea, yeah. I mean, connecting these ancient Stoic principles to, modern motivational content, it really highlights their timeless relevance.
Okay, so impressions are those automatic thoughts, and assent is like giving them thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Yeah.
We can choose not to, buy into the negative ones and instead focus on a more empowering perspective. This is really starting to click for me.
It's like building a muscle, that ability to pause and examine our impressions before we react. And the more we practice, the better we get at choosing a response that aligns with our values and our goals.
So it's not about suppressing our emotions or pretending everything's always rosy. It's about recognizing that we have more control over our inner world than we often realize.
Exactly, yeah. And that brings us to another key insight from Discourses, the nature of good and evil.
Ooh, this sounds deep. Lay it on us.
All right, so Epictetus says good and evil don't reside in external events themselves, but in the state of our character.
Okay.
Things happen, right? We get stuck in traffic, we spill coffee on our new shirt, we win the lottery, but those events are just neutral. It's our judgments about them, our choices in response to them that shape our character and determine whether we're moving towards virtue or vice.
So getting that promotion isn't inherently good, and getting a flat tire isn't inherently evil. Is how we react, how we internalize those events.
Exactly.
That matters. Did we handle the promotion with grace and humility? Did we let the flat tire derail our whole day, or did we find a way to roll with it, literally?
You're getting it. And this ties back to what we were talking about earlier with, impressions and assent. If we can train ourselves to examine those initial judgments, we can choose to respond to any situation, good or bad, in a way that strengthens our character rather than weakens it.
This is so powerful. It's like Epictetus is giving us this like framework for taking responsibility for our own inner state, for building resilience, and finding a sense of peace regardless of what life throws our way.
And he doesn't just leave us with abstract concepts, right? He uses these vivid stories and examples to illustrate these principles in action.
Oh, I love a good story. Give us an example, like what kind of situations did Epictetus use to kind of make these ideas come alive?
Well, there's this one story about an athlete who was faced with an incredibly tough choice. He had this serious injury, and the only way to save his life was to have his leg amputated.
Wow, that's a heavy situation.
So his brother, who was also a philosopher, came to him and asked, "What will you do? Will you choose to live, even if it means losing your leg and, giving up your athletic career?"
I can't even imagine having to make that choice. That there's so much at stake. Your identity, your dreams, your very life.
Yeah, this athlete was deeply committed to his values, like his sense of self. He couldn't bear the thought of living with what he saw as, the indignity of amputation. So he chose to die.
That's an incredibly powerful example of someone putting their principles above, like even their own survival. But it's also pretty extreme, isn't it?
It is, and Epictetus isn't saying that we should all choose death over difficult circumstances, right? He's using this story to highlight a fundamental Stoic principle, like considering your character, your moral integrity in every decision.
It's like he's saying there are some things more important than physical comfort or even life itself. Our values, our principles, like the things that make us who we are at our core.
Exactly, yeah. And that's a challenging but incredibly empowering idea. It suggests that we have the power to choose how we respond, even to the most difficult situations.
So even when we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we face it, how we define ourselves, like amidst the chaos.
That's the essence of Stoicism, yeah. And Epictetus goes on to offer, more specific guidance on how to cultivate this inner strength. For example, he talks about the importance of self-control, not being swayed by flattery or the desire for external validation.
That's such a relevant message today, especially with social media and the constant pressure to seek approval from others. It's so easy to get caught up in that game.
Yeah. Epictetus is reminding us that true fulfillment comes not from what others think of us, but from living in accordance with our own values.
This is incredible. It's amazing how these ideas from ancient philosophy can still resonate so strongly today. It's like they tap into something fundamental about the human experience.
That's the power of great philosophy, right? It transcends time and culture. And Epictetus, with his clear, direct style and emphasis on, practical wisdom, makes these profound questions accessible to anyone.
I'm already feeling inspired to rethink how I approach challenges and make choices that align with my values. And I know our listeners are feeling it too. This is just the tip of the iceberg though, right? There's
Yes.
so much more to explore in Discourses.
Absolutely, yeah. Epictetus offers a wealth of insights on dealing with grief and loss, cultivating virtues like patience and courage, and even navigating the complexities of social interaction.
I can't wait to dive into all of that. But before we continue our exploration, let's pause here for a moment. We'll be right back to uncover more wisdom from Epictetus and Discourses. Welcome back. I'm still buzzing from that last segment. Epictetus is really challenging me to rethink my whole approach to life.
Yeah.
Before the break, we were discussing how he uses powerful stories to illustrate Stoic principles. Do you have another one for us?
Oh, absolutely. And this one might really make you think. Epictetus is talking about, dealing with grief and loss. And he makes this really unexpected comparison.
Okay.
He compares grieving a child to grieving a broken oil cruet.
Whoa, hold on. That sounds intense, maybe even a little insensitive.
I know, right? It's definitely jarring at first.
Right.
But remember, Epictetus is all about challenging our conventional ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And if we look at this analogy through the lens of Stoic philosophy, it starts to make a bit more sense.
Okay, I'm willing to hear him out. How does a broken oil cruet relate to the profound grief of losing a child?
Well, think about it. The Stoics emphasize focusing on what's within our control.
Right.
We can't control the fact that, a loved one dies.
Right.
Just like we can't control if a cruet slips from our hand and shatters. These events just happen. They are part of the natural order of things.
So he's not saying that the grief isn't real or that the loss isn't significant. He's saying that the event itself, the thing that's outside our control, isn't the source of our suffering, is our reaction to it,
Right.
our attachment to the person or the object
Yeah.
that causes the pain.
You nailed it. By comparing a child to a cruet, Epictetus is shaking us out of our emotional autopilot. He's prompting us to question those attachments, to recognize that even our deepest affections can be sources of, unnecessary suffering if we cling to them too tightly.
It's a bit like the Buddhist concept of non-attachment, right? Not in the sense of becoming cold or unfeeling, but in the sense of recognize the impermanence of, all things, even the people we love most.
That's a great connection. Yeah, the Stoics and Buddhists, while having, different origins, share some profound insights about the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. And for Epictetus, that path involves, accepting the reality of loss,
Right.
of change, of things being outside our control.
So instead of resisting the reality of death, we should embrace the preciousness of life while we have it. And when loss inevitably comes, we can choose to grieve in a way that honors the memory of our loved one without being consumed by despair.
Beautifully said. It's about finding that delicate balance between feeling the pain of loss and recognizing that, our well-being, our inner peace doesn't depend on clinging to things we can't keep forever.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on how to approach not just grief, but any challenging situation.
Right.
It's about accepting what we can't control and focusing our energy on our own response, our own choices.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where Epictetus's teachings become incredibly empowering. He's not advocating for passive resignation,
Right.
but for active engagement with life, even when it's tough.
It's like he's saying, look, life is going to throw you curveballs. You're going to face disappointments, setbacks, losses, but you have the power to decide how you're going to show up in those moments.
Right.
You can choose to let them break you, or you can choose to use them as opportunities for growth and resilience.
Powerful. Right. And he applies this principle to all sorts of situations, dealing with insults, navigating poverty, facing illness, coping with political upheaval. In each case, he reminds us that, our judgments, our attitudes are the key to navigating those challenges with grace and integrity.
It's so easy to, get caught up in the blame game,
Yeah.
to point fingers at external circumstances or other people for our unhappiness.
Right.
But Epictetus is urging us to take ownership, to ask ourselves, okay, this is the situation. What's within my control? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values, with the kind of person I want to be?
It's like shifting from a victim mentality to a creator mentality.
Right.
And that's where the true freedom lies.
I'm starting to see how Stoicism, despite its reputation for being austere or unemotional, can actually be a source of deep strength and even joy.
It's a bit paradoxical, isn't it?
Yeah.
It teaches us to find freedom by accepting limitations, to find peace by facing our fears, to find strength by acknowledging our vulnerability.
I'm reminded of that quote from, the Ingredient. Epictetus's pocket guide to Stoicism. If you want to be free, do not wish to have or avoid things that other people control.
That's brilliant. It gets right to the heart of the matter. Our desire for things outside our control, wealth, status, the approval of others, that's what traps us in a cycle of craving and dissatisfaction.
It's so tempting to chase those external things, though. It's like they're constantly dangling in front of us, promising happiness, so we can just grab hold of them.
Epictetus would agree. I mean, he understands that these desires are part of the human condition, but he insists that we can rewire ourselves, that we can train our minds to focus on what truly matters,
Yeah.
on virtue, on living in accordance with nature, on finding contentment within ourselves.
That sounds like a, lifelong process, a constant practice of self-examination and self-discipline.
It is, and Epictetus is honest about the challenges involved, but he also offers encouragement, reminding us that this inner work, this pursuit of wisdom is, the most worthwhile endeavor we can undertake.
It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves, not in the eyes of the world, but in our own eyes.
Yeah.
And that's a journey worth taking, even if it means stumbling along the way.
Exactly. It's like an athlete training for the Olympics. It requires dedication, perseverance, and a willingness to push beyond our comfort zones.
So Stoicism is not a, quick fix or a self-help fad. It's a serious commitment to living a life of purpose and meaning, a life grounded in wisdom and virtue.
Well said. And I think that's why Epictetus's teachings have resonated for centuries. They offer this timeless path to navigating the complexities of being human, to finding strength and resilience in a world that's constantly throwing us challenges.
I'm already seeing how these ideas can be applied to my own life. Whether it's dealing with work stress, relationship issues, or just the general anxieties of modern life, Epictetus offers this framework for finding clarity, making choices aligned with my values, and cultivating a sense of inner peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances.
And he does it all with such wit and clarity, even when he's discussing, heavy subjects like death and loss. There's a sense of humor, a warmth that makes his teachings engaging and even inspiring.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from the tough questions, but he also doesn't leave us feeling overwhelmed or hopeless. He gives us practical tools and strategies for putting these philosophical principles into action.
And that's what makes Discourses such a valuable resource, both for those who are new to Stoicism and for those who've been studying it for years. There's always something new to discover, some fresh insight that can shift our perspective and help us grow.
One of the things that keeps coming up for me, in our exploration of discourses, is this emphasis on personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Epictetus isn't, sugarcoating things. He's not promising a life, free of challenges. But he is saying that we have the power to choose our response, to shape our own character, even in the face of adversity.
It's such a radical message, even today.
Yeah.
It challenges that victim mentality so many of us fall into, blaming our circumstances or other people for our unhappiness.
Yeah, it's like he's shaking us by the shoulders and saying, wake up, stop complaining, stop making excuses. You have the power to change your perspective, to change your life, starting right now.
Yeah, and he gives us concrete tools to do just that. He talks about examining our impressions, questioning our judgments, and aligning our desires with what's truly within our control.
It's interesting to compare Epictetus's approach with, other philosophical schools of thought from his time. The Epicureans, for example, also believed in finding happiness, but their focus was more on pleasure and avoiding pain.
Right, and Epictetus would probably say, watch out, that path leads to a slippery slope. If pleasure is your ultimate goal, you become a slave to your desires. You're constantly chasing after things you can't control, setting yourself up for, disappointment and frustration.
So the Stoics weren't against pleasure, but they saw it as a byproduct of living virtuously, of aligning your will with nature. It's not the destination, it's a potential result of the journey.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why Epictetus puts so much emphasis on self-control and discipline. It's not about, suppressing emotions, but about training our minds, learning to navigate our inner world with more awareness and intention.
He even compares the untrained mind to a, leaky jar, constantly losing its contents.
What a great visual. Yeah, it highlights the importance of, mental discipline, strengthening our ability to focus our attention, to resist distractions, to make choices that are aligned with our long-term goals rather than our immediate impulses.
That's something we can all relate to, especially in today's world with all the distractions and temptations vying for our attention. It feels harder than ever to cultivate that kind of mental focus and discipline.
Right. And that's precisely why, Epictetus's teachings are so relevant today. He offers a path to freedom, not just from, external constraints, but also from the tyranny of our own desires and fears. It's about taking back the reins of our mind.
And this isn't just for a select few, right? This path is open to anyone, regardless of their background or their circumstances.
Absolutely. I mean, remember, Epictetus himself was born a slave. He knew firsthand the limitations imposed by external forces, but he also discovered that true freedom lies within, in the power of the mind to choose its response, to shape its own destiny.
That's such a powerful message, especially for those who might feel stuck or limited by their current situation. It's a reminder that we always have a choice. Even if it's just a choice of attitude, we can choose bitterness or gratitude, resentment or acceptance, fear or courage.
It all comes back to, focusing on what we can control, on developing that inner strength to face, whatever life throws our way. And that's why I think, Discourse is essential reading for anyone seeking a more fulfilling and meaningful life. It's a timeless guide to navigating the challenges of human existence and cultivating the virtues that lead to, genuine happiness and inner peace.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive into discourses has been, eye-opening. It's given us so much to think about and apply to our own lives.
And for those looking to, continue their exploration of Stoicism, I highly recommend checking out lingopediamagazine.com. They have an amazing selection of online courses and ebooks on, you know, Stoic philosophy and related topics. It's a great resource to deepen your understanding and connect with a community of, like-minded individuals.
We'll definitely include a link in the show notes. And for our listeners who are enjoying these deep dives, don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this podcast. It really helps us, spread the word and get these thought-provoking ideas out to a wider audience.
We love hearing from you, so please leave a comment or, send us an email with your thoughts on the episode. We're always eager to, engage in further discussion.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the wisdom of Epictetus and Discourses. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to live a life worthy of your highest ideals.